Like I kind of said this morning, the idea of the devotion for this afternoon, it's a story we're all very well aware of. I hate using the word story, but the account in the Bible of Jesus walking on the water. As I was reading through it, because it's in the series with Matthew of where we've been walking through and following the trail that Matthew led us through, and Matthew 14 verses 22 to 33 talks about this account. As we remember, is that and the thought I had about it is, are we going to stand tall when the time comes, or are we going to fall down? And so the idea is, of course, Jesus just fed and his disciples just went out to try and be by themselves, but a large crowd followed them. And then they were there at night, they fed everybody, and then Jesus put his disciples into the boat, and they all started towards the other side, and he stayed behind to disperse the crowd and then go and pray by himself. When he did this, we see where he's alone now. He doesn't have a mode of transportation to get to the other side. Maybe the disciples thought that he was going to find another boat. He was just going to walk around. They would see him tomorrow. I don't know. But all of a sudden, during the third watch of the night, or fourth watch, I'm sorry. Let's go by the biblical account here. It says the fourth watch of the night. As we start doing this and counting it out, usually each watch lasts about 3 to 4 hours, best I can tell from looking at it and understanding it. So it's probably a little darker than this image right here. The winds are tossing the boat around a little bit and throwing waves, but then all of a sudden there is this figure walking. If you've been traveling for a couple of watches, you're not by shallow water anymore. You're out a ways. And so all of a sudden to see someone walking on the water, I understand when the disciples said, "It's a ghost." They were afraid a little bit. But then we see a very familiar phrase. Now, most translations don't translate it the same way, but looking at the literal translation of verse 27, he says, "Be of good courage, I am." Have we heard that phrase before? I am. Quite simply, to the people of the Old Testament, when they were asking, "Who are you?" God only had to say, "I am the I am." That was all the explanation needed, and Christ uses the same word here in the literal translation. Be of good courage, I am. Be not afraid. Most translations say it is I, or something to that effect, but to think about, Jesus has been saying, "I am the one who is coming. I am the Messiah that you've been looking for." The woman at the well is like, there's someone coming. He said, "He is here." So for Jesus to say that to them here would be a great comfort to everyone. And then all of a sudden we see this idea, we see the effort that Peter has here. Before we get to what Peter does, have any of us ever thought about, it's like we're in the moment of something and all of a sudden something just shows up and we just go to do it. And someone looks at us and says, "What are you doing? You can't do that. That's not possible." And it's like, "Well, I'm doing it." Wait a minute, why is it not possible? Peter decides to jump out on a leap of faith and say, "Call me. Can I come to you? You're walking on the water. I'm not even thinking about the physics of this. This doesn't work. The I am is walking to me. I'm not even thinking anymore." I thought about the scene out of Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade where he's going for the cup of Christ. But as one of the challenges, you have a rock face on one side and a rock face on one side and a big chasm of nothingness in the middle. And it says you have to take the step of faith. Now, in the movie, you just can't see it straight on, but then it gives a side shot and you see it's an actual bridge there. But when you're looking, you're seeing this massive gulf that you cannot cross. Peter is looking out across the water and said, he can't be there, but he is, and he is the I am. Can I come to you? And Christ says, come. Notice what is possible when we don't let ourselves get in the way. And I think, now, I don't advocate going out into the middle of the ocean and just stepping off a boat. I do not recommend it. He was with Christ, so I'm going to give a little bit of a miraculous to this event, but notice what happens around him. All of a sudden, he starts remembering his surroundings. The winds are blowing up, the different things are happening, and all of a sudden, Peter falls into trouble. If we look at it from a spiritual sense, what are those winds? What are the waves splashing around us? What are all the distractions in life? What is Satan putting up in our midst, whispering in our ear as the little cartoons illustrate, as we think about what are the things that go on in our minds that shouldn't be there? What are the things that happen around us, to friends, to neighbors, relatives even, co-workers, all of these things that just creep up? How many people say, oh, something came up? A gust of wind came up, and hey, let's look at that. Or hey, I'm afraid of that. And all of a sudden, he was afraid. He lost focus from Christ. And when he did that, he had to call out to him and say, Lord, save me. In verse 30, we see that phrase, Lord, save me. A few verses back, it was, Lord, can I come to you? He was strong, he was convicted, he was focused. When he lost his focus, he had to turn around and say, Lord, save me. We can gain so many different lessons and ideas, one of which even once we are saved, we can still have to utter those words, Lord, save me. We sin. We have distractions that come up in our lives, and this happens. But verse 31, what does Christ do? Immediately, Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him and said to him, O thou of little faith, why did you doubt? And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. Jesus reached out immediately. When one of his children call out to him, he is there. As we see over and over here, when people are sick and reaching out to him, he's there for them. When we are sick spiritually, when we have sinned and we say, Lord, help us, he's there. He's not right here standing at my side, physically going to grab my hand, but spiritually, he is. Spiritually, he's ready to accept anyone into the fold. He's willing to leave the 99 to go for that one to save each and every one that is willing. Peter lost the focus, but he regained his focus quickly. I think of Jonah also, when all of a sudden going down into the water. As Jonah ran from God, he kept going down and down and down, but when he looked up and called back to God, he was brought forth. We can do the same thing today. So the encouragement is to stay on the path of Christ, to focus on him. But if also the encouragement is, if we do lose focus of the things around us, the winds are blowing and we're distracted, we can put our focus back on Christ again. If anyone does need the invitation, we'll still sing a few more songs after this, but do want to offer the invitation. We'll do number 611, Take the Name of Jesus with you. Take Jesus with us. Just remove some of the distractions of our lives. But if anyone does need the invitation, we'll go ahead and stand and come forward while we sing.